Hello everyone, welcome to the first video of actual content. None of the stock video. Actually, I'm already aware I'm going to be using stock video, so what you're looking at right now is stock video in post-edit. I already know that when I'm using my voice and not the actual screen, I'm going to be using stock video, so I'm really sorry if you hate it. I love it, so that's what we're going to be using. Today's topic is environments. What is an environment? Why do we care? And how do we get an environment onto our machine? Which, by the way, is already an environment. So the extra question of why don't we just use our own machine for analysis? All of that and potentially more to be coming up in this video. So sit down, strap yourself in to whatever chair with a seatbelt you have, and let's get rocking, let's get cooking. Wait, before we start, again, I do like lo-fi beats. I feel like if I do it every video, it's going to get a little bit repetitive. So let's spice it up with jazz. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, cool. Now we're ready. Let's go. Welcome to my environment. Before we detonate ransomware on this machine, let's have a little talk. Let's have a little chat about what is an environment and why do we care. So an environment is basically anything that you can run programs on. There will be some technical definitions that I'm sure Microsoft has some documentation on that if I find, I will post again in post-edit in a big screen whilst you're listening to this. But for the most part, I'm actually going to use MS Paint to see if I can just begin to describe and discuss what actually is an environment, and then why can we not just use our machine here, and what are the things we have to use instead. So, alright, so this is going to go horribly wrong. When we talk about environments, we talk about the main machine that we're using, we cannot use our physical machine that we currently are operating on, or the thing that you're currently listening to. One, because it's your phone, but two, because if you're using a laptop or desktop, I'm going to draw a laptop, and then I have to do that as well. And no, it has to be like that. Yeah, that's kind of a laptop, right? It's background here. So that's a laptop. Let's add a cat screensaver. It's a cat with some eyes. It's two eyes, the body, and that's a cat, right? So that's a cat. So what I'm trying to say is, without using my poor drawing skills, is that in order to analyze anything on our machine, we need to actually interact with it. We need to practically be engaging with our environment in order to be able to understand what things do, because it is all well and good reading all the Microsoft documentation you could ever wish to read, until you actually get a hold of the machine, until you actually feel what it's like to press a certain command or enter a certain command, press a certain button, use a certain tool. There is literally no point being in cybersecurity. Our job is to break things, to find out the best solutions to the problem itself. So one of the reasons that we don't want to be using a physical environment is, well, let's do a demonstration. One of the biggest reasons we don't want to be using our physical environment is because when we are interacting with malware and we're interacting with malicious script or anything that could be bad, we don't even know if it is bad, it could be bad. It has the potential to directly impact our system. So here you can see I have a top secret do not delete file. Now, unfortunately, the contents of this file are incredibly important, and if they were to be deleted, I'm not sure I'd be able to, I can't think of a way to pun that in. However, let's say the malware that we're looking at is a PowerShell script. Now PowerShell is an incredibly powerful tool that is native to the Windows system, so it is available on all Windows machines and can be incredibly powerful. It has a ton of flexibility that allows you to basically obfuscate anything you want, so it evades antivirus. And this is all stuff that we'll get into later. I don't really need to go into PowerShell. This is more just for me to say there are certain functionality that PowerShell can do, and if we were to accidentally, let's say, not just load a script onto our system, but execute it, because it's one click away, literally. The difference between dragging and executing is one click. If we accidentally detonate it, we could end up deleting said script, and that is literally just done by remove, oh god, item? Oh, that's not right. Remove item. And then we just link to the thing, and it didn't. Oh, wait. Yes, it did. I panicked. I didn't realize it didn't work. It did work. It worked. Okay, so in theory, if we are going to be using malware, then we need to be very, very careful with our environment. We basically cannot use our physical environment, because if we are to use any malware analysis tools that run the malware as we're going, and we'll talk about the difference in different analysis techniques in a later video, but just on a basic conceptual level, if we are going to use our machine for analysis, we need to be prepared for the consequences. As we've established that we can't use our own environment, or rather our own physical machine, there is a solution. In fact, there are several solutions, but they all fall under the banner of the same solution, which is virtual machines. Virtual machines are, as the name suggests, a virtual platform and a virtual operating system within your own physical environment. It sounds kind of crazy. At least when I first started learning about it, I was very much of the mind of this is magic, this is black magic. But I assure you, it is very real and it's awesome. And the best part is, there is a free solution that is not just free light version of a paid version. It is free and insanely cool. Now, there are multiple versions and instances of virtual machines. There are really two options that I see, plus an additional third, which is mandatory. And again, no rush on any of these things, we are going to get to them. But of the two options that are available, one is completely free and the other one comes with a free trial but is paid. So on the paid side, you have Vmware's Workstation Pro. Workstation Pro is amazing. I love it, and actually will be mostly using it throughout the entirety of these videos because I think it's smooth. I think the ability to have multiple virtual machine instances is an excellent feature. So you can bounce between one virtual machine that you have set up for, let's say, some individual analysis, and then on the other side, on the next tab, you have another virtual machine that does whatever it is that you want it to do. And that's really helpful as an analyst who is doing two tasks maybe for the same malware, and it stops you having to kind of rinse and repeat. If you're talking about costings, you have two options on the Workstation side of things. You have Pro, which I think is about $169 a year, and then you have Player, which is $89 a year. The difference between them, and I'm giving my first bit of advice here, the difference between them is fundamental. Do not get Workstation Player because it removes the ability to make snapshots. And that is, we haven't talked about snapshots yet, but I'm telling you right now, not having a snapshot functionality is broken. It is something that just doesn't make sense for what we're trying to do. We need to be able to revert our machine back once we break it to its original state, or a state we had it in before. And again, we'll demo that in a little bit. But for now, I am giving my opinion that if you are going to invest money into a virtual machine product, put it into Pro. Do not get Player. At least for if you're going to go into reverse engineering and malware analysis, the amount of times that you're going to need the snapshot functionality, it is just not worth investing in Player when you could have Pro. Let's say, however, we don't want to spend money on a virtual machine. That actually, we're new to this field, we're just curious about how it works. We're not really interested in shelling out $200 for a virtual machine that we may only use once because we want to support our friend, our colleague, a stranger on the internet for just putting himself out there and making videos. Of course, we're talking about VirtualBox, a completely free virtual machine that allows you to do everything that you would be able to do on VMware Workstation Pro with a few features taken away, but the fundamental ones are still there. You have a system, you can decide how much memory you want to give it, how much processing power you want to give it, as well as the ability to snapshot. And again, a word that I'm talking about and using with significance that we haven't actually looked at practically yet, but it is coming. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to assume that everyone watching this is going to want to use VirtualBox. If there is a need for people to walk through VMware Workstation Pro and the functionality that it has and how I use it, then more than willing to do that. But what I think I'm actually going to do instead is I'm going to use VirtualBox just for this video. I'm going to be talking about all the features that it has that are going to be really useful to us. And I'm also going to be pointing out where those features are in Workstation as well and how you can access those. So that if on the off chance someone is incredibly inspired by my selling of Workstation Pro in the 30 seconds that I talked about it, then you won't hopefully be lost. But from here on in, we're going to be using VirtualBox to set up our virtual machine and hopefully be in a place where we can pretty much have an environment ready to use for malware analysis. It is kind of really that simple. Okay, so we are on the VirtualBox downloads page. It's being a little bit funny today. You'll be seeing in the video that I've had a couple of DNS resolving issues. So I am on the downloads page. You get that just via the URL here. I'll post it in the description. And we get kind of given this, what I think is quite an overwhelming web page. So we are looking for we're looking for Windows host. I mean, if you're on Mac, then they have Mac host as well as some Linux distros, but we want to be looking at Windows. I think it's going to take me directly to, it's going to download it straight away. So we're going to get a download file exe straight away, and we can open that up right now. Okay, so we've got this interface. We can go to next. None of this. You can select where you want to store it, depending on how your storage system setup works. If you're like me and you don't care until your computer tells you you should, I'm just going to leave it default. Network feature, reset your network connection, and if you care about this, then excellent. I don't, because I don't. Installing. No. What's actually happening here is VirtualBox is alerting us that there are certain dependencies that we currently don't have installed, and that's only for a very specific module of the VirtualBox. It's still going to run without it. If we're going to need it at some point, we can always install it at a later date. But I wouldn't be put off or panicked by this message. It's just an alert. Click installation to begin. This is going to take some minutes. Maybe I'll talk over it. Maybe you're going to see me cut immediately to when it's... Oh, no, it's done. And we're going to start it. So this is going to be one take. This is going to be excellent. This is going to be the least editing I've ever done. So we have our virtual machine installed, and now we are going to need an operating system that we can use within the virtual machine. The reason for that is because the virtual machine is literally just, as the name describes, a virtual machine. In the same way that when you bought your most recent laptop, or you made your own desktop PC, when you are finished building it, you need to install an operating system. Now, oftentimes it will come pre-packaged with an operating system, usually Windows, as that is kind of the default, and you can either uninstall that and get Linux, and if you have a Mac or an Apple device, you will be using an underlying Mac OS, which you will be downloading at runtime as well, and you remember the loading bar, and you basically just let it run and let it do its thing. Well, the same is true of a virtual machine. It doesn't have any properties, it literally just exists on its own. So we need to download an operating system, and the best way to do that is to, let's see, virtual machine Windows download. Let's see. And Microsoft is really kindly has some virtual machines set up for us. If you are running VMware, so if you bought Workstation Pro, you can use that. There are a couple of others. You can see there's Parallels and Hyper-V. Those are separate virtual machines that I just don't feel the need to go into. But we want to be using VirtualBox, so we want to click that and basically wait for it to download. Now it's going to be quite substantial. Oh boy. Yeah, it's going to be 21 gigs. So we'll let that run and then we'll come back afterwards. So you'll hear the neat transition that I've definitely edited in. Alrighty-roo. So after downloading the operating system, we have this interface and we are going to immediately go to import. And our source is going to be a local file system, and the file is going to be... So it should be in downloads. Now what you might see is nothing here. And what you're going to have to do is find the zip version of the file. So let's find it here. Here's the zip version. And then extract all. And then once you extract it, it's going to be in its own little folder, which you can then easily navigate to, and then click next. And let's see, guest OS Windows 11. We got some RAM. You can set the RAM, you can set the CPU. I like to keep them as standard. Again, it's really worth just playing around with what your machine can handle, and you find that out basically as you go. I'm going to store the virtual machine base folder as such. Include network and yeah. I mean, network adapter MAC addresses, that's fine. Input hard drives as VDI, that's also fine. Appliances not signed, also fine. So it's finished, and it's now gonna do it. You'll see it. Run it here. So I will just skip ahead, and when it's 100%, we should see it like somewhere over in this region. Excellent. It is now here, and that's it. We're basically done. That's a lie. But the basic fundamentals are done. We have an environment which we can now use to, break stuff. It's gonna start up. There are some troubleshooting issues I have observed through forums and other, what are they called? Messaging places that show that there may be an issue with blank screen showing up. I have done this now several times and haven't encountered an issue, but if you have, I will post some links down below in the description as to the standard troubleshooting that I've seen. So if there's still an issue, please put it in the comments and I will address it immediately. As even though I am one of the largest content creators on YouTube, I still have time to read the comments. So as we're loading this up, we await basically our new operating system, which is super exciting. It's coming. It's doing the thing. Might take a little bit of time just because I haven't given my virtual machine all that much processing power. So it's just working out how to do its thing. Please. There we go. Oh wow. We've done it. Amazing. Cybersecurity completed. Hello. Getting things ready. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. If you could do that a little bit quicker. This might take a few minutes. Oh boy. I'm gonna edit. Not this bit, because this is real stuff. You're listening to the real in the weed stuff right now. I'm full on, no editing, no software, no camera crew. It's just me and the virtual machine, seeing if I can outlast the Windows operating system setting itself up with me inanely talking over it. If you're this far in, congratulations. Alright, so we've done it. We are actually now in a virtual machine. Let me just get rid of this and get rid of all that. Notifications. Ugh. So this is our machine. We can do whatever we want with this in the same way that we could do with our machine before. So using the PowerShell example as before, it's going to tell me to install some latest PowerShell stuff, which I can do that at a later time. But if I do shut down R, we can do everything we want to do without any consequences whatsoever. I'm apparently about to be signed out, but I am yet to see. Are you going to do that? Or Okay, so eventually it decides it's going to restart. You know what? It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not going to complain about it. It's all good. It does what I wanted it to do eventually. I.e., we can use PowerShell. We can use any tools that we want to do whatever we want on this machine. And then we can do something that I've talked about several times already in this video. We can use snapshots to basically reinstall the point at which we were before we started to break things. So before talking about tools, before talking about anything like that, and those will probably be in the next video, let's talk about snapshots. Fight Club. So I realized this is the snapshot section, but I also realized that I haven't really talked about the settings of this VM at all. So we will be doing snapshots in this little section, but I realized we might not even have covered how to get up to the snapshots point. So if we go into settings, if you actually look at your virtual machine right now, you'll notice that my bar, the top of my screen, has this here, which is super useful. It provides all of the extra functionality of the virtual machine, and by default it won't have that set up. So if we go to settings, go to user interface, you want to change this visual state to normal or window. Granted, you can change it to all the others if you're using any of these, but normal window works for me, whilst scaled, which I thought I was in, actually doesn't. So I'd recommend going to normal window, and that will basically allow you to use the menu whenever you want. And we will cover this in a little bit, like what all of these things do. But for now, if we go to machine, we have this setting here, take snapshot. Now what this will do is it will basically take a literal snapshot, a moment in time where we were before, that allows us to essentially undo any mistakes that we make during our processing of reverse engineering, of malware, of making sure that if we do, for example, step into functionality a little bit too far, or we execute a malware that maybe ruins our operating system, then we can actually go back and take a snapshot. I can show you this in 1 second. So whilst we're doing this demonstration, it's actually a good way for us to transition into other elements of the virtual machine that we haven't actually covered yet, including something called a shared folder. A shared folder is a folder that allows you to basically move things from your physical machine into your virtual machine. Now, you can't just drag and drop files from your physical kind of file explorer location into your virtual machine. The reason for that is due to memory management and memory issues. All that matters is you can't do it. But what you can do is set up a shared folder. Now the way you do that is go to devices on the top menu and then go to shared folders. Now what you're going to need is, let's go to machine folders and then add here. What you're going to need is a folder on your physical machine that you can link to this one. So I already have one. Now I added it in my desktop here. So what I actually do is in my desktop here, if I just close this down, like in my desktop here in Vmshare, that is my virtual machine. So if I go back to this, I'm going to link my Vmshare folder. You can put this folder wherever you want. I really like putting it at desktop just because it means it's an easy transition for me to add files to it and then link back to each of them quite swiftly. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to load that here and I'm going to do that. Mount point, I'm just going to put Vmshare because I think that's correct. I can't actually remember what mount point is. Now here you have some options here. Auto mount and make permanent. I like ticking both of these. Read only is an interesting notion. Ideally, you will always have read only ticked. The reason for that is if you have malware that potentially likes to search for remote folders or random network jump points, if your file isn't read only, you could potentially damage your actual physical machine, in particular the files that you've worked so hard to kind of maintain and collect. One great example of this is there are ransomware variants that like to bounce to remote shares, So if you were to detonate that ransomware and you had read-only off, you would actually just detonate the ransomware into your shared folder and you'd lose all your malware, because even if you were to revert the snapshot to a previous file, or a previous state rather, you would still have all of your files because it's in a different location. So you would still have all of your files in their physical space, and because they've been altered, you can't revert those. So you would just lose it. So I would always say have read-only on until you don't need it, or you want to move something into your physical machine. There are times when you might need it, and we will probably encounter those as we do more reverse engineering and more analysis. But for now, I'm ticking all 3 of these and I'm clicking OK. And then I'm going to go to File Explorer, and then I'm going to go to Network, and it will say turned off, and I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to say turn on Network Share and Discovery, and then I'm going to say no, just for now. And what we should see is eventually, if I click off and then here again, we'll see our VBox server, which is our virtual machine, which is here. Now, one of the really good things I like to do is to basically create a link to the desktop so I can always access it. And this is great because it means I can always access my tools and my malware straight away, so I can just pull out whatever I want. So let's go to MISC and then ransomware, and then let's pull out our dark side ransomware sample. We'll talk about how to get the malware and how we deal with the malware and the tools that we use to analyze the malware at some point, not right now. For now, let's just keep this as is. So I've actually done or gone too far ahead. What I want to do is delete this. This is the setting. This is almost the setup that I want for my virtual machine, but not quite. There's one other thing that we have to do first, and that is address one of the elephants in the room, which is the network settings. There are very few occasions I would recommend you have NAT network on, or have any network on at all. So if we go to network and we go to network settings, what we want to do is change this to host only and click OK. The reason for this is because if we have NAT connected, that basically means our virtual machine and its network settings act as an extension of our physical machine, which means that it's connected to the internet, pretty much exposing our machine to any activity that we commit in this virtual machine. That's a problem, because if we start analyzing, let's say, malware that looks to communicate with a malicious server, we may be alerting the threat actor to our IP address, which may leave us exposed to future attacks, which I know sounds like a hyperbole, but the risk is really not worth the reward, or whatever the expression is. Don't do it. There'll be a few occasions when we need to turn NAT on, and that's to maybe ingress some tooling, but there is always a way to bypass network, maybe download the tooling onto your actual physical machine and then port it in through the shared box, the shared folder that you have here. So for now, we have host only. So now we have the network turned off. Now we're ready to make a snapshot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to device. What am I doing? Machine. Take snapshot. Now there is a shortcut here, but I just like to do it like this, and we're going to call this ready for use. And okay, there is also, you saw there's a way to describe the state that you're in. That can be useful for note taking. If you have a specific setup or you're in a specific phase of your analysis, and we can see here we're nearly done with the snapshot. Let's just give it some time. There we go. Excellent. So now we can revert this machine back to its original state if we need to. And I can now demo this. If we do what we were doing before, we go to virtual machine, malware. Again, don't worry about my setup. I will talk through my setup in another video. I realize we're dragging on a little bit here, but it's all good. I'm having fun. Hope you're still here. Good. So now we have some ransomware, well, almost on our system. Let's open this and then extract it. So here we have some ransomware. Oh, I know why this is. This is a great time to explain What you want to do with your virtual machine also as a big yes, as opposed to a no, get rid of all antivirus, because Windows antivirus, especially Windows 11, is good enough to recognize when there is bad on the system, especially if it's a malware or a binary that is quite known already, because there is no doubt that Mystic and the really guys over at the Microsoft Threat Intel team haven't signatured this already. So we're going to turn off all of this. We're going to turn off cloud delivery protection, we're going to turn off automatic sample, we're going to turn off none of these really matter, to be honest. It's just this one. Real-time protection is the big one. You want to turn that off. And I realize we've actually made a mistake and we should have snapshot already, but we haven't done that. So let's make another snapshot. Actually ready this time. Cool. So cool. We should be okay. Just give it a quick second. So yeah, just for summary, always make sure that your network settings are turned off. Always make sure your shared folder is in read only unless you really need it to not be, and there will be cases where you need it not to be. And thirdly, always make sure that antivirus is turned off on this machine, only on your virtual machine, not on your physical machine. Please, please, please make sure you're in your virtual machine and it's only your virtual machine settings that you're tampering with. Because otherwise, otherwise you're in trouble. Okay, so we've done that. So now if I try to open this and extract it, we shouldn't have any problems. Oh, it's been a little slow.
What?
Try again.
Bro.
So I actually worked out the issue. Well, I say I worked out the issue. There is some funny stuff going on with the default Windows zip manager. I ported in WinRAR, which is a folder management tool. There are a couple of others available. 7-zip is really good. Again, tooling, getting ahead of myself, we'll talk about tooling at another point. But the point is I managed to extract the binary, and we have read-only file system, I think. Let's have a look. Read-only, our internet is off, and our antivirus is clearly not working because we have a ransomware binary here. So if I detonate this, I think something bad is going to happen. Yeah, okay. This happens, and this has basically ruined our system. As the ransomware tells us, all of our files are encrypted. So we basically can't do any more with this machine without running into some problems later down the line. And ultimately, I don't really want to be analyzing malware with a system that's already infected with some form of malware. So what we can now do is use the snapshot system to essentially start again. So unlike VMware Pro, I can't do it in real time. With VMware Pro, there is a kind of function similar to this menu, which basically allows you to revert the snapshot immediately. But here, we're going to have to do this thing where we exit out first, so we basically power off the machine. We then have our snapshot here, and what we want to do is, because it's powered off, we can just press restore. We do not want to create a snapshot of the current machine state. It just doesn't make sense. The machine is pretty busted, so let's just restore without it. And it's currently doing that. So I think it's done. So let's just, I think it's under the current state. So we can now start this up, and we should see that everything is now normal again. It's powering up, and there we go. Everything is as before. Literally as before. We still have the dark side binary. You can see it there. Right there. So, snapshots, super powerful. And also, may I point out, necessary, because the license you get for your Windows virtual machine is 90 days. However, using snapshots, you basically just reset that count every time you do a reset of your original snapshot. So, you have unlimited time. So on top of being really useful, it's also kind of necessary to keep your Windows machine alive. And with that, we've covered everything, almost, I think, that I wanted to cover in this first setting up video. We've gotten a VM, we understand why we need a VM, we've installed the operating system on the VM, and we've gotten to the point where we understand snapshots and how to use those and what we're going to be using them for later down the line. And we have a clear direction as well. We know that we're headed towards tooling now. We have the VM set up, we have some idea of snapshots, so now what we need to do is look at tooling. And that, although it sounds like there isn't that much there, that is a whole Pandora's box of the next step. The ceiling of our technical knowledge is about to be dramatically increased just by discussing tooling, because tooling covers everything about malware analysis, from static and dynamic malware analysis to the different kinds of malware, the different programming languages that can be used to make malware, and the different tools that we need based on the language that we're looking at. We then will end up through that process talking about packers and the ways that malware can be obfuscated and the ways that we can deal with that when we find it through tooling. What I'm saying is there's so much to look forward to and so much to learn, and that's awesome. I am so excited. All this to say, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Is this off? Oh no.